The Galactic Council had seen many species rise and fall across the cosmos, but none quite like the humans. My name is Corvin, 82, senior xenobiologist aboard the research vessel Midnight's Edge, and what I witnessed during our expedition to the Terran colony of New Brisbane still haunts my sleep cycles. Another distress beacon from the Outer Rim colonies, announced Captain Zolak, her scaled hide rippling with irritation. Third one this cycle. These humans seem incapable of keeping themselves alive for more than a few rotations without calling for help. I adjusted my data pad with one of my 6 appendages while monitoring the ship's sensors. Perhaps their expansion rate exceeds their survival capabilities, Captain. The species did spread across 7 star systems in less than 2 centuries. Reckless breeding habits, muttered our security chief, Grax. His mandibles clicked dismissively. No wonder they keep running into trouble. Oh, how wrong we were. The beacon originated from a mining operation on Kepler, 442c, a world the humans had cheerfully named New Brisbane despite it being a frozen hellscape with temperatures that would snap freeze most civilized species in seconds. The planet's surface was dominated by massive ice caverns and underground thermal vents where the colonists had established their mining facilities. Standard rescue protocol, Captain Zolak ordered. Scan for survivors, assess threats, extract any living personnel. What we found instead was carnage that defied explanation. The mining station's main complex was torn apart from the inside. Massive claw marks scored the reinforced titanium walls like they were made of soft clay. Emergency lighting cast eerie red shadows across corridors littered with shredded equipment and other things I prefer not to catalog in detail. By the 7 moons, whispered Grax, his weapon trembling in his grip. What kind of creature could do this? I was busy analyzing the claw marks with my portable scanner. Based on the depth and spacing, I estimate the creature stands approximately 4 meters tall, with retractable talons measuring 30 centimeters in length. Bite radius suggests a jaw span of nearly 2 meters. Any survivors? Captain Zolak's voice crackled through our comm units. Negative, Grax reported. We have found 47 human remains so far. Whatever attacked this place was thorough. That's when we heard it. A low, rumbling growl that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. The sound made my gill slits flutter involuntarily, triggering every prey instinct my species had evolved over millions of years. Movement detected in Section 7. I hissed, checking my scanner. Large biosignature, approximately 200 meters down the main tunnel. We advanced carefully, our plasma rifles charged and ready. The tunnel curved downward into the planet's geothermal layers, where the mining operation had been extracting rare earth elements. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically, creating a strobe effect that made shadows dance and writhe. The creature we encountered defied every classification system in my extensive database. Standing nearly 5 meters tall on powerful hind legs, it resembled a grotesque hybrid of reptile and mammal. Its hide was armored with overlapping scales that gleamed like polished obsidian in the artificial light. 6 massive arms sprouted from its torso, each ending in curved talons that could slice through starship hull plating. Its head was elongated and serpentine, with rows of crystalline teeth that reflected the emergency lighting like deadly prisms. Apex Predator Class Omega, I whispered into my recorder. Previously unknown species. Appears to be the primary cause of colony destruction. The creature's multiple eyes fixed on our position with predatory intelligence. It had been feeding on the remains of the mining equipment, its acidic saliva dissolving metal components with disturbing efficiency. Fall back, Grax ordered. This thing is beyond our capability to handle. But as we retreated, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Scattered around the creature's feeding area were the remains of not just human colonists, but also several other species. Vegan traders, Altarian merchants, even what appeared to be the carapace of a Zephyrian war form. This thing had been hunting sentient beings across multiple star systems. Captain, I transmitted urgently. We need to classify this planet as a quarantine zone immediately. This creature represents a threat to all galactic civilization. Agreed, came her swift reply. Prepare for immediate extraction. That's when we heard the scream. Not the death cry of another victim, but something else entirely. A human voice, raw with rage and defiance, echoing from deeper within the mining complex. The sound was so primal, so filled with fury, that even the apex predator paused in its feeding to listen. Impossible Haxmutold. No human could have survived down here. But the voice came again, closer this time, accompanied by the sound of running footsteps and what could only be described as a battle cry. The creature's head swiveled toward the sound, its multiple eyes narrowing with interest. What emerged from the shadows was not what any of us expected. A human male, perhaps in his third decade of life by their reckoning, burst into the feeding chamber with nothing but determination and a jagged piece of mining equipment clutched in his bare hands. His name, we later learned, was Jack Morrison, a maintenance engineer who had somehow survived the initial attack by hiding in the ventilation systems. "You want some more, you ugly piece of garbage?" he shouted at the creature, which towered over him by nearly 3 meters. "Come on then, let's finish this." I have studied human behavior for over 2 centuries, but nothing in my research had prepared me for what I witnessed next. The apex predator, this unstoppable killing machine that had devastated an entire colony and left the remains of dozens of sentient beings in its wake, actually hesitated. Its predatory instincts seemed confused by this small, soft creature that refused to flee. Jack Morrison stood his ground, blood streaming from multiple wounds, his breathing labored but his posture defiant. In his hands, the improvised weapon looked pathetically inadequate against the creature's armored hide. "Fascinating," I murmured, unable to stop myself from documenting the encounter. The human displays no survival instinct whatsoever. Classic evidence of species-wide mental deficiency. How spectacularly wrong I was about to be proven. The creature lunged with lightning speed, 6 massive arms reaching out to crush this insignificant annoyance. Jack Morrison, this supposedly primitive human, did something that defied every law of physics and combat theory I knew. That he moved. Not just moved, but flowed like liquid mercury around the creature's attack. His body seemed to bend in ways that should have snapped his spine, ducking under claws that whistled through the air where his head had been a microsecond before. Recording combat engagement, I whispered into my device. Human subject displays reflexes approximately 40% faster than previously documented maximum response times. The creature's second strike came even faster, a coordinated attack from multiple limbs designed to overwhelm any possible escape route. Jack Morrison responded by doing something I had never seen any species attempt. He grabbed one of the creature's arms. Not with a weapon, not with any technological assistance, but with his bare hands. As the massive limb swept toward him, he caught it, used its own momentum to swing himself up onto the creature's back, and drove his improvised weapon deep into what appeared to be a gap in its armored hide. The apex predator's roar of pain and fury shook dust from the chamber ceiling. It thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge this unexpected passenger, but Jack Morrison held on with a grip that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Impossible muscular density, I reported, my voice rising with excitement despite the mortal danger. Human grip strength exceeding calculated maximums by over 300%. But the most remarkable thing was not Jack Morrison's physical capabilities. It was his tactical thinking that, as the creature spun and bucked, trying to throw him off, he was studying it, looking for weak points, analyzing its movement patterns, calculating angles of attack. His eyes held an intelligence that was both primitive and terrifyingly advanced. "Grax," I hissed, "are you recording this?" Our security chief could only nod, his mandibles slack with disbelief. The human is fighting an Omega-class predator with nothing but improvised weapons and manual dexterity. This should be impossible. The creature finally managed to reach back with one of its secondary arms and rake its claws across Jack Morrison's torso. The human was flung across the chamber, bouncing off the metal wall with a sickening impact that should have killed him instantly. Instead, he rolled to his feet, spat blood, and smiled. actually smiled. "Is that all you got?" he called out, wiping blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. "My grandmother hits harder than you, and she's been dead for 10 years. The sarcasm, even in the face of certain death, was purely human. But what happened next transcended species boundaries entirely. Jack Morrison began to move in a pattern that seemed almost like a dance, circling the creature, staying just out of range of its attacks, but close enough to strike at vulnerable points. Each movement was calculated, precise, efficient. No wasted energy, no unnecessary risks. He was hunting the hunter. Behavioral analysis indicates adaptive learning curve far exceeding normal human parameters. I documented frantically. Subject appears to be analyzing creatures' attack patterns in real time and formulating counter-strategies. The apex predator, growing frustrated with its inability to land a killing blow, made a critical error. It overextended one of its primary limbs in a wild swipe that left its torso momentarily exposed. Jack Morrison struck like lightning that he dove under the creature's guard, rolled between its legs, and came up behind it with that jagged piece of mining equipment raised high. But instead of going for another surface wound, he targeted something specific, something he had been studying during their entire engagement. The base of the creature's skull, where the armored plating had a microscopic gap. The improvised weapon punched through scales and hide that had deflected plasma rifle fire, penetrating deep into the creature's nervous system. The apex predator's roar cut off mid-cry, its massive body convulsing as neurological damage cascaded through its system. But it was not dead. Wounded, enraged, and now desperate, it spun around with its remaining strength focused on one goal: crushing this impossible little human who dared to challenge it. Jack Morrison stood his ground as 5 meters of apex predator collapsed toward him, arms spread wide, claws extended for a final killing embrace. What he did next will haunt my dreams until my final day that he caught it. Not all of it, of course. That would have been physically impossible, even for a human. But he caught enough to redirect its momentum, to guide its fall, to ensure that when nearly a ton of muscle and bone and rage crashed to the chamber floor, Jack Morrison was still standing. The apex predator twitched once, twice, then lay still. Jack Morrison stood over its corpse, breathing heavily, bleeding from a dozen wounds, but alive. More than alive. Victorious, he looked up at our position in the observation alcove and gave us a cheerful wave. "Hey there, folks. Sorry about the mess. You wouldn't happen to have a medical kit, would you? I think I might have pulled something." The casual tone, the complete lack of recognition for what he had just accomplished, the way he treated the defeat of an Omega-class predator as merely an inconvenience, left us speechless. Captain Zolak's voice crackled through our comm units, tight with disbelief. "Status report. Did that human just—" "Affirmative, Captain," Grax replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "The human has neutralized the apex predator threat using only improvised weapons and manual combat techniques." A long silence followed. When the captain spoke again, her tone had changed completely. "Prepare for immediate extraction. All of us, including the human." As we made our way back to the shuttle, Jack Morrison chatted amiably about the weather on New Brisbane, the quality of the mining equipment, and his plans to visit his sister on Luna Station once this whole mess was sorted out. That he seemed completely unaware that he had just rewritten every combat manual in the known galaxy. "Mr. Morrison," I finally worked up the courage to ask, "how did you know where to strike the creature? How did you identify its weak point so quickly?" He shrugged, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his injuries. "Took a xenobiology course back in college. Plus, my dad used to take me hunting when I was a kid. You watch something long enough, you figure out how to kill it." The casual dismissal of his achievement, the matter-of-fact tone, the complete absence of boasting or pride, it was all so thoroughly human that I found myself reassessing everything I thought I knew about their species. As our shuttle lifted off from New Brisbane's frozen surface, I began composing my preliminary report. But how does one document the impossible? How does one explain that a supposedly primitive species had just demonstrated combat capabilities that exceeded every theoretical maximum in our databases? More troubling still was the question that would haunt the Galactic Council for years to come. If one human could defeat an Omega-class predator with improvised weapons in bare hands, what are they capable of when properly motivated and equipped? The answer to that question would come sooner than any of us expected, and it would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. 3 standard cycles later, I found myself standing before the Galactic Council's emergency assembly, my report clutched in trembling appendages. The marble amphitheater buzzed with nervous chatter from representatives of 47 different species, all demanding answers about the human incident on New Brisbane. Councillor Corvin, 82, announced Prime Speaker Thane, her crystalline voice cutting through the noise. Present your findings regarding the Terran colonial situation. I activated the holographic projector with shaking digits. The image of Jack Morrison standing over the defeated apex predator materialized above the assembly floor, causing immediate uproar. Fabrication, screeched Ambassador Vortex from the Centauri delegation. No single organic being could defeat a Reaper-class hunter without technological assistance. The human designation for this creature was apparently Tuesday, I replied dryly. Mr. Morrison informed me during debriefing that it reminded him of his former mother-in-law. The assembly erupted in chaos. Representatives clicked, hissed, and warbled their disbelief while I waited for order to return. Furthermore, I continued once silence fell. Subsequent analysis of colonial records reveals this was not an isolated incident. Human settlements across 12 systems have reported similar encounters with Omega-class predators. In every case, human colonists not only survived but thrived. Prime Speaker Thane's luminescent form pulsed with concern. Explain thrived, Counselor. They domesticated them. The statement hit the assembly like a plasma torpedo. Silence stretched for several heartbeats before Ambassador Claxon of the Rigel Collective found his voice. Impossible. Apex predators cannot be domesticated. Their neural structure prohibits pack bonding with other species. Tell that to the Morrison family ranch on Kepler 438b, I replied, pulling up another hologram, where they currently raise 17 different species of formerly classified Omega-class predators for agricultural purposes. The image showed Jack Morrison's cousin, Pete, riding what appeared to be a 6-legged, armored death machine across an open field. The creature's multiple heads were adorned with what humans called party hats, and it seemed to be enjoying itself immensely. They used them for plowing fields, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. The humans call it extreme farming. Ambassador Vortex collapsed into his seat, his breathing apparatus wheezing rapidly. This violates every principle of evolutionary psychology. Predator-prey relationships are fixed biological imperatives. Not for humans, apparently. I continued. During my extended observation period, I documented 47 instances of humans either befriending, domesticating, or outright defeating creatures that should have eliminated them within seconds. Elaborate, demanded Prime Speaker Thane. I pulled up my next set of recordings. Subject designation Tommy Rodriguez, age 12 standard years, was discovered by rescue teams playing fetch with a Vorthan Shadow Stalker. The creature, capable of phase-shifting through solid matter and dissolving organic tissue with its touch, was apparently named Mr. Whiskers. The Vorthan delegation began making distressed, keening sounds. Subject designation Linda Patel, mining supervisor on Proxima 7, reported that her crew had adopted what they termed Gary the Tentacle Monster after it wandered into their cafeteria looking hungry. Gary now assists with heavy lifting operations and enjoys human music, particularly something called death metal. I paused to let that information sink in before continuing. Most disturbing of all was my encounter with Dr. Marcus Webb on the research station orbiting Wolf 359. Dr. Webb had been conducting behavioral studies on captured specimens of Andromedan void hunters, creatures that exist in the vacuum of space and feed on starship hulls. Those are classified as extinction-level threats, whispered Ambassador Claxon. Dr. Webb had taught them to play poker. The assembly dissolved into pandemonium. Species that had been mortal enemies for millennia suddenly found themselves united in their terror of humanity's apparent ability to turn any threat into either a pet or a recreational activity. Order! Order! Prime Speaker Thane's voice cut through the chaos. Counselor Corvin, 82. What is your professional assessment of the human threat level? I straightened all 6 of my primary appendages. Based on 3 cycles of intensive study, I classify humanity as a Class X evolutionary anomaly. They appear to possess an adaptive capability that defies all known biological principles, meaning they get stronger when you try to kill them. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Every representative in the assembly understood the implications immediately. Take the case of the Zeta Reticuli incident. I continued relentlessly. When the hegemony attempted to establish dominance over human space by unleashing a pack of genetically enhanced war beasts on their agricultural colonies, I activated another hologram showing what appeared to be a human child, no more than 10 years old, bottle feeding something that looked like a cross between a shark and a tank. Little Annie Kowalski found one of the war beasts injured in her family's cornfield. Instead of fleeing or calling for help, she nursed it back to health. The creature now protects the entire settlement and has reportedly learned to operate farming equipment. But the psychological conditioning, stammered Ambassador Vortex. War beasts are programmed to kill anything that moves. Annie taught at chess, I replied flatly. It's apparently quite good. Beats most adults. The implications were staggering. If humans could not only survive encounters with purpose-built killing machines, but actually turn them into productive members of society, then every military doctrine in the galaxy was obsolete. There's more, I announced, though I could see several representatives were already in various stages of species-specific panic responses. The Human Colonial Defense Force has begun recruiting these so-called impossible creatures into their military. They call it the Friendship Through Superior Firepower program. I showed them footage of human soldiers riding into battle on creatures that have been the stuff of nightmares for countless civilizations. But instead of the chaotic slaughter one might expect, the scene showed remarkable coordination and tactical brilliance. The humans have weaponized friendship, I concluded. They have turned the very concept of natural selection on its head. Prime Speaker Thane's luminescent form dimmed considerably. What do you recommend, Counselor? Before I could answer, an alarm began blaring throughout the assembly chamber. Emergency lighting bathed the amphitheater in red as automated systems announced incoming vessels. Unidentified craft approaching council space. Configuration unknown. Refusing communication protocols. Through the massive transparent dome above us, we could see them arriving. Human ships, but not like any in our databases. These vessels were organic in appearance, their hulls seeming to pulse with life. As they drew closer, we could see why. The ships were alive. The humans had somehow convinced spacefaring organisms to serve as their vessels. By the 7 moons, breathed Ambassador Claxon, they have domesticated void whales. The massive creatures, each one capable of swallowing a battle cruiser whole, glided peacefully through space with human habitation modules grafted onto their backs. Weapon ports that should have been bristling with plasma cannons instead showed what appeared to be windows, with curtains that a communication request came through the Council's emergency channels. The face that appeared on our screens was familiar, Jack Morrison, but now wearing what appeared to be an official uniform of some kind. "Hey there, Council folks," he said with that same casual tone I remembered for New Brisbane. "Hope we are not interrupting anything important. We just wanted to drop by and introduce ourselves properly." Prime Speaker Thane managed to find her voice. "Mr. Morrison, I presume you represent the human colonial government." "Among other things," Jack replied cheerfully. "See, after that little dust-up with the mining station, we got it thinking. Maybe it's time we all had a proper chat about how things work out here in the galaxy." Behind him, through what appeared to be the bridge window of his living ship, we could see other humans casually interacting with creatures that our databases classified as cosmic horrors. One appeared to be playing some sort of card game with a tentacled entity that existed partially outside normal space-time. We know you have all been pretty worried about us humans lately. Jack continued. All those reports about us being dangerous and unpredictable and whatnot. Can't say I blame you, really. He paused to scratch behind what appeared to be the ear of a creature that resembled a metallic dragon the size of a small building. But here's the thing. Jack's tone became slightly more serious. We are not interested in conquering anybody or taking over the galaxy or any of that nonsense. We have got plenty to keep us busy, just making friends and exploring new places. Friends? Managed Prime Speaker Thane. Sure. Take old Devastator here. Jack gestured to the dragon thing, which purred like a contented cat. Found him terrorizing shipping lanes in the Outer Rim. Turns out he was just lonely. Nobody had bothered to try talking to him in about 3,000 years. Creature, Devastator, waved one massive claw at the camera in what appeared to be a friendly greeting. The point is, Jack continued, we humans have figured out something that maybe the rest of you haven't quite grasped yet. The universe isn't actually trying to kill us. It's just really, really big, and sometimes things get cranky when they don't have anyone to talk to. Are you suggesting, Prime Speaker Thane asked carefully, that all Omega-class predators are simply misunderstood? Not all of them, Jack admitted. Some are just genuinely nasty. But most of them, they're just scared, or hungry, or bored, or haven't had a decent conversation in centuries. You'd be surprised how many problems you can solve with a sandwich and a willingness to listen. As if to prove his point, something that looked like a living nightmare floated past the bridge window, tentacles waving cheerfully as it munched on what appeared to be a pizza. So here's our proposal, Jack said, leaning back in his chair. Instead of everybody being terrified of everybody else, how about we try something different? We humans are pretty good at making friends with things that want to eat us. Maybe we could help broker some peace talks. The assembly sat in stunned silence. The most feared species in known space was offering to mediate disputes between galactic civilizations and cosmic horrors. You would do this? Asked Prime Speaker Thane. Voluntarily? Sure, Jack shrugged. Beats having a fight all the time. Plus, some of these guys have amazing stories once you get them talking. Did you know that Devastator here used to be a poet? He's been working on an epic saga about the heat death of the universe. It's actually pretty good. Devastator rumbled something that sounded vaguely musical. The only condition, Jack continued, his tone becoming slightly more serious, is that everyone has to promise to try talking before shooting. Violence should be a last resort, not a first response. And if someone violates this agreement, asked Ambassador Vortex, nervously, Jack's smile became slightly less friendly. Well, then they will have to deal with all of us. And as you have probably figured out by now, we humans can be pretty creative when someone threatens our friends. Through the dome above us, more human vessels continued to arrive. Each one was different, each one was alive, and each one carried passengers that defied every nightmare our species had ever imagined. But instead of an invasion fleet, it looked more like a cosmic carnival. Think it over, Jack said. We will be around for a while. In the meantime, we have got some surplus food supplies if anybody's hungry. Devastator makes a mean barbecue. The transmission ended, leaving the assembly in absolute silence. Finally, Prime Speaker Thane spoke. Counselor Corvin, 82, your final recommendation? I looked around at the assembled representatives, seeing my own terror reflected in dozens of different facial configurations. But beneath the fear, something else was beginning to emerge. Hope, perhaps, or maybe just exhaustion from centuries of constant warfare and mutual suspicion. I recommend, I said slowly, that we accept their offer. Are you insane? Screeched Ambassador Vortex. They're offering to unleash cosmic horrors on anyone who disagrees with them. No, I replied, finally understanding. They're offering to protect us from cosmic horrors. There's a difference. And so began what historians would later call the Great Friendship, an unprecedented era of galactic peace mediated by a species that had turned the very concept of survival into an art form. But that's a story for another day. Right now, I have a dinner invitation from Jack Morrison and something called Devastator the Dragon Poet. I'm told the barbecue is supposed to be amazing. Who knew that the scariest thing in the universe would turn out to be an invitation to make friends? The humans, apparently. They knew all along.